Welcome to the Hojo on Architecture podcast. The Architecture of the Myth, Chapter 3, Height as Political Space. In the previous chapter, we explored how vertical separation gives birth to authority. Once the cosmos is divided into above and below, hierarchy quietly enters existence. But abstraction is not enough. Authority requires location. Power, if it is to endure, must settle somewhere. And in Greek mythology, it settles on a mountain. Mount Olympus is not merely the home of the gods, it is the institutionalization of vertical power. It is what happens when hierarchy acquires an address. Olympus is elevated, remote, and partially obscured by clouds. It is visible, yet inaccessible. Its altitude is not incidental, it is constitutive. Height here is not landscape, it is a political structure. To dwell above is to rule below. The summit becomes sovereign. Unlike chaos, which was undifferentiated, Olympus is organized. It contains a council, a hierarchy among deities, a distribution of roles. Zeus presides, Athena advises, Poseidon commands the sea. Even divine conflict is spatially framed within an ordered setting. Olympus is not simply high, it is administratively high. We might think of it as the first elevated headquarters. What distinguishes Olympus from earlier vertical separation is permanence. Uranus dominated through enclosure, but Olympus governs through institution. The mountain is stable. It is not a temporary platform. It is an architectural condition. Power here is no longer an abstract position in the sky. It is anchored to terrain. Terrain becomes governance. The choice of a mountain is deeply revealing. Mountains require ascent. Ascent requires effort. Effort implies worthiness. Access is controlled not only by distance but by difficulty. The very geography performs exclusion. Olympus teaches us that architecture need not always rely on walls to restrict. Altitude can do the work. Elevation naturalizes hierarchy. Throughout history, sacred mountains echo this mythic pattern. From Sinai to Fuji, from the Acropolis to medieval hilltop citadels, height signals separation from the ordinary. The city lies below, the sacred or sovereign resides above. The climb itself becomes a ritualized acknowledgement of difference. Even in secular modernity, we preserve this logic. Government buildings are raised on plinths. Financial districts cluster in vertical concentration. Penthouses command premiums not because of additional square meters, but because of altitude. The higher one lives, the further one is from the street, and perhaps from its unpredictability. Olympus is thus less a mythic fantasy than a spatial diagram. It reveals how authority seeks elevation not merely to see further, but to be seen differently. From below, the summit appears detached from daily struggle. Clouds soften its outline. Distance enhances mystique. Visibility without accessibility produces reverence. Power benefits from partial obscurity. The gods on Olympus are not constantly among mortals. They descend when necessary, but their dwelling remains elevated. This oscillation between distance and intervention is essential. Too much proximity dissolves hierarchy, too much absence dissolves relevance. Olympus balances both through spatial positioning. Architecture still performs this balancing act. Institutions design lobbies that are open yet guarded, facades that are transparent yet imposing. Headquarters project accessibility while maintaining separation. The mythic mountain survives in glass and steel. Perhaps what we call neutrality in architecture is often well-disguised altitude. But Olympus is not only about domination, it is about order. Within its heights, the gods debate, negotiate, and dispute. The summit contains plurality. It is structured but dynamic. This internal organization matters. Height alone does not sustain authority. Structure does. Olympus is a political interior. We rarely imagine the interior of Olympus in detail, yet myth implies halls, thresholds, and assemblies. There is space for gathering, for judgment, for spectacle. Even the divine requires spatial choreography. Authority is staged within architecture, even at a mythical scale. From this perspective, Olympus becomes less a peak and more a model. It demonstrates that elevation must be accompanied by internal order. A mountain without governance is simply terrain. Olympus is terrain transformed into a system. And systems, once established, replicate. Cities create their own Olympuses. Financial districts, parliamentary hills, executive floors. The top floor is rarely random. Corner offices are rarely accidental. Elevation becomes a reward, a symbol, a reinforcement of hierarchy. We may insist that modern societies are horizontal, networked, and decentralized. Yet our spatial instincts continue to gravitate upwards. We build observation decks for perspective. We market sky lounges. We equate altitude with achievement. Perhaps Olympus never disappeared. It was rebranded. Yet the mountain also contains vulnerability. Height isolates. Distance can detach authority from ground reality. Olympus may govern, but it risks abstraction. When rulers remain too elevated, they misread the terrain below. Myth anticipates this tension. The gods intervene precisely because detachment creates instability. Authority must occasionally descend to remain legitimate. Spatial separation requires periodic reconnection. This dynamic between summit and city prepares us for the next spatial transformation in Greek mythology, the emergence of the polis. If Olympus represents authority above, the city represents identity among. The mountain organizes hierarchy. The city negotiates belonging. In the next chapter, we will descend from Olympus to Athens and examine how a city becomes the product of mythic competition. Because once authority occupies the height, the question shifts. How does space construct civic identity below? Every summit casts a shadow. This concludes Chapter 3 of The Architecture of the Myth, Height as Political Space. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.